Testimonies are so important because they're truthful, they're honest. Jesus used them all the time, and throughout the Bible there's testimony after testimony after testimony. You know, when someone says something from the heart and they're telling you the truth, well, you can't deny it, because we do come from truth, we come from love, we come from honesty, which is all about God. God is truthful, God is loving. When you tell a testimony, I don't believe that anyone can really deny it. They may say they don't agree with you, or that's too good to be true, or whatever, but they know in their heart if you're honest or not. There's something which is in each one of us that connects us all together, and it's called God. And God has integrity. God is totally honest. So that's the connector. I want to share this testimony. I'm going to try and give you a timeline, a little bit of what changed my life, and how 3 eagles actually did it, and how God used those eagles in my life to change me from the person that I was, the old man, into the new man today. Still, my mind is transforming like yours is transforming. But we are transforming if we keep in the Word and we keep in the Holy Spirit and we action our faith. What happened with me was, in my early years, I was a guitarist, and I was a drug addict from the first year of high school. So from about 13, I got fairly heavily into drugs. I was one time there drugged for 6 weeks, from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. Mostly that was with marijuana and hash and all those sorts of things. Then it progressed into, tripping, drugs and, hallucinates and all sorts of speed and all sorts of things like that. It came in heavier and heavier and heavier. And I remember one day I was with a mate who was wanting to take me to the next level, because I was into acid, and I'd take 2 trips and half a dozen Jack Daniels, and still I was compos mentis. I could function on that, and I enjoyed it. And I was thinking, is there more? Now that's a dangerous thought to have when you're off your chops on drugs, because you know what the next step is. It's shooting up, or it's ice, or something like that. And ice wasn't really prevalent in my day, or wasn't known as ice. And he took me down to North Parramatta. I remember being in this house with him, and it was a different house. One guy was sitting beside the the bathtub, and he was crying. Now I don't know why, but he couldn't get into the bathtub, obviously. There was another guy laying on this dirty old lounge with a dirty blanket on him, looked comatose. I was wondering if he was alive or dead. He was alive. And there's this old radiator with one bar going, and there was a bit of old, toaster, and it was just smelt. And I had this thought, this is not for me. Now my mate wanted to score. Well, he could score, but this was not for me. At least I had that sense. Not everyone has that sense. I just pray that people do get that sense, because that was going to cross the line for me. Now I continued on with drugs, and alcohol increased. Drugs started to reduce. I always worked, and I was a guitarist, and myself was the biggest focus in the universe. I was going to be the next Jimi Hendrix. I would practice and practice. I was auditioning for commercial bands. That's all I wanted to do. I had long hair. I surfed. I thought I was so cool and so wonderful. And the guitaring was getting better and better. It was getting good. But my mother and father wanted to save me, so they put me into an apprenticeship, and there I was, digging out carbon from old early tanks and cleaning down grinders, and then smack goes a grinder into my left ring finger, my lead finger. That put me out of the guitar. That took me away from my dream. And even when it healed, a year later I tried getting back into the lead, but the pain just kept slowing me down all the time. And there I was, getting married, and I held down a job. I left the apprenticeship, held jobs down the whole time, and unfortunately the depression and stress and anxiety that was in my life was too much. My wife left me for one of my very well-known ex-mates, and found a grass that looked greener on another side, and there I was, my wife and children gone, in a worse state now of depression than I've ever been. Eventually I met another woman, and she had 3 children. I had 3 children. We blended the 3 children together, and it was hard because they didn't know each other. She sold her house, I sold my house. We put all our house stuff into a container and moved into a house at the top of a mountain. Unfortunately, just before we moved the container in, it got burnt down in a bushfire. All the contents, all the lounge chairs, the memorabilias, it was that hot that it burnt the aluminium from the motors of the mini bike and the chainsaw, and everything was melted inside except some of the boxes that had things like photos in there. They were in cardboard boxes, amazingly enough. It was the internal heat which was combusting everything else. It wasn't actual literal fire, but when we opened up the container, it was just a burst. It was a burst of fumes and flames. Yeah, it was bad, and she got anxious. She got very upset. I wasn't as upset because I'm not a woman with the children responsibility as much. Mine was shared. Like, there was all sorts of things going on, and what happened next was absolutely disastrous. You could imagine not knowing the light switches, not knowing the schools, not knowing the people around the area, not knowing the shops, not having the clothes that you wanted to wear or the lounge to sit on or any of those sorts of things going on, and we've still got smiles on our dials, and then a worse thing happened. There was an accident. She hit a man, a pedestrian, she hit him with the car, and her son was in the car with her, and this just tore her apart because she was a soft woman, a caring woman, and this just tore her apart, and it caused a very serious heart issue. This is traumatic for everyone. Her son, the man, of course, that got hit. Everyone was traumatized. When she came home, she was different. There was an anxiety level in her that I hadn't seen before. We lived separately now, separate rooms, and Smiles was still trying to be put on the dials, but she was that sick she nearly died. And there was a change. She even said to me that she's not the person that I thought she was, and things like that were happening. Identities changed. We're still trying to keep 6 kids together, and we did very well, and she tried very, very hard, and it was such a test. And then she lost her job, and I lost my job. I sold a business, and there's no money coming in, and it's just disastrous. We got to the point where we had no money. There's sickness, there's we've got mortgages and cars to pay for, and I put out 60 resumes, nothing was happening. It was just disastrous, and I wasn't sleeping. And one morning I remember I was standing out on the driveway, and there was a bit of sun, and I just put my hands up and I said, "Help! Help!" And I thought, who am I saying help to? Because for the last 10 years I'd been doing Buddhism. I'd been doing everything that I could to settle down. Drugs, alcohol, Buddhism, everything. 14 days silent retreats, you name it. I did it. Hypnotherapy, I tried everything. And there I was on the driveway, absolutely at the lowest point, or almost at the lowest point, close to wanting to suicide, wanting to run away, if you've ever felt like that. And I got this internal voice saying, go to a church. I felt boring, absolutely boring. I've tried quite a few times and no one there could I relate with, and that was just boring music, boring people, boring talks. The whole thing was boring. And I got this thought again, go to a church, and I couldn't get it out of my head. There was no other thing to do. What was left? What else could I try? Apart from suicide. And I couldn't do that to the kids or to my partner. I couldn't do that. So we got in the car. Now I remember my wife and the daughter got in the car and we went off in search of a church. Well, we did find one. And all I remember now from this point is sitting on a plastic chair, a great big screen coming up with this majestic looking eagle flying across the sky, and it said something like, if you trust in the Lord, you'll renew your hope or your strength or something. And I just held on to that. Now, I must have driven home. I don't remember driving home, but I do remember walking into the garage and thinking, I'm going to ride out to the cliff. So I got my push bike, wiped off all the cobwebs and the dust, hadn't ridden it for 1,000 years, and put my backpack on and rode out to a cliff. And at that cliff, I was sitting on the edge, and below, 1 kilometre below abouts, there's a little river. You can just see it, and you look out to the west, and there's a beautiful valley and blue skies. And there I was sitting on it, took my backpack off, and I just put my hands up and I said, thank you again. And I heard this noise, and I looked over to my right, and there it came, this huge wedge-tailed eagle just gliding through the air. Like in slow motion, he glided past my face, he turned his neck, and he looked at me with his black browny eyes, and I looked at him, and it was like they pierced me, like it was just, went inside me. It was amazing, and he just flew out into the valley, and I was speechless. I started jumping around those rocks like a cartoon character, something which I hadn't done in the last few years, that's for sure. Hadn't had any times of joy, but there was a joy that came in me. I don't know what it was. I grabbed my backpack and my bike and I rode home, and it was 10 o'clock that night, and I just, the penny dropped. Could this be God? Could this be real? Could this really be him? I mean, I didn't want to go to a church. I didn't even think of it myself. It came into my head. So we found one, and I saw a big eagle on a screen. And less than 2 hours later, I saw another big eagle. This time it was face to face. And then it just came to me that God is trying to speak to me. He's trying to get my attention. Then another thought came about a week or so later. It's just a coincidence. Everyone gets told to go to a church, then goes and sees an eagle on the screen, and then sees an eagle, 2 hours later. Happens to everyone every day. Well, my son came out with his mate for Father's Day and said, do you want to go for a ride? And I said, yeah, let's go out to the rock, to the cliff. I took them out there, I spoke to them, and I told them the story which I've just shared with you. Both boys are sitting on a rock. My back was towards a cliff. And as I finished the story, this eagle must have done this great power dive, and it came up behind my back. I don't know how close he was, but we felt a punch of air just rush across us and hit us from him coming up. And then he hovered above our head for a few seconds, and then just sailed out into the into the valley. And to say that we were flabbergasted, amazed, such an understatement. These young boys' jaws dropped, just like mine. It was amazing. They couldn't believe it. All I could say is, I told you this is true. This is real. This is from God. This is really from God. Well, at that point, I was on antidepressants, anti-anxiety, blood pressure pills, cholesterol pills, any pills and whatever, alcohol, whatever I could do. It probably wasn't much alcohol back then, but there was still going on a little bit, and anything that I could do to try and calm down. But as I went forward, as I broke off the the Buddhism, as I broke off things that were, holding me back from knowing God, and I started getting into God, things changed. And it wasn't immediate, but one thing I do notice, and one thing I do remember, and one thing I encourage you with, is trust in the Lord. Trust in Jesus. Now, I didn't know Jesus at that time. I didn't know how fundamentally important Jesus is, but Jesus is God. He was walking around on the ground saying, hey guys, I'm good. I haven't had one bad thought. I'm going to get into heaven for you because you can't get in because you have bad thoughts. If you trust me and believe me, you can get in too. Well, I didn't understand that part, but it was a journey to get into him and to understand him and to get into that peace and that joy and that hope. And today, I've seen so many people healed. I've seen lives turn around. I don't have any of those medications, and hope has increased, joy has increased, and peace has increased so much. And yes, fear does try and take me sometimes, but I know the antidote, and it's called Jesus and his word. And as I get back into that and trust that again, fear gets knocked out. So I will praise him. I will say thank you to him for what he's done for me, and what he does for me, he does for others, because all he did was focus on God and focus on other people. And now that's what I'm doing, unless I get taken out with my own self-interests. Now that was what was one of the catalysts that caused marriage breakdown. My own self-interest, racing motorbikes, supercars, taekwondo, bushwalk, whatever it was. I focused on me and what I needed instead of focusing more on the children and my family. Now, I love them and I did lots of things for them and with them, but where was my heart? So God wants your heart. And once your heart knows Jesus and believes him, things start to change in a wonderful way, and he will supply all your needs, everything. Then he'll give you comfort when storms and trials and tribulations and problems come. He'll give you comfort because you know that you'll be okay. You know that you'll be coming out the other side with a smile. I hope this has encouraged you. It's real. The first person that I touched and had a massively sore throat was healed instantly. The second person at the same restaurant came up to me. I didn't go up to them. They came up to me because someone else sent them over. They had a big fat leg. I touched that leg and it just went back to normal size, and it was completely healed. She was going off for an operation. She ran down the stairs of the restaurant. I remember. It was amazing. It was amazing. And it's continued, and it's going to increase, and more people are going to come to Jesus than I can imagine. I know this is happening, and it can happen for you too. It can happen for you more. It doesn't matter about me. What it matters is about everyone knowing who made them, who created them, who loves them, who wants to keep them well all the way into heaven for tomorrow, the next day, and forever. And it's a long time, and it's going to be a great place together. I just want us all to be there. I just pray that this has been some motivation. It's real. Check it out. You don't have to believe me. Do your own research. There's plenty of atheists and professors and doctorates that have tried to disprove the Bible and the findings, and they've actually been turned around because the evidence is conclusive. What's said in the Bible was said in the Bible. It's true. Jesus said he's the only one, the only way to get through to God. You can't have a million gods. You can't have a million ways. He's the way, the life, and the truth. No one comes to the Father except through him. And so if you say that and you believe that, then you'll have a new spirit born into you. And that's exciting, because at the moment, unless you've got Jesus in your spirit, you've got God in your spirit, like you've been born again, your spirit is not alive. Spiritually, it's just a human spirit. And you want that life spirit. I want that life spirit. It's a wonderful spirit to have. And as your mind renews, it'll come in line with the spirit, and it gets better and better and better. I just pray this has been motivational for you, encouraging for you. It's real. Yeah, and I just bless you and bless your family too. in Jesus' name.